So that's
That's great.
We call the meeting to order, and if we could, let's stand. Our prayer this evening is being offered by Reverend Michael Carter of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation here in White Mountain. Michael, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. Hello, everybody. I want to just commend this to you. This is more of an affirmation than a prayer. It's by a man by the name of John O'Donohue. He died very young. It's called To Bless the Space Between Us. He was very heavy into a Celtic spirituality. It's called For One Who Holds Power. May the gift of leadership awaken in you a vocation and keep you mindful of the providence that calls you to serve. May you have the wisdom to read time clearly and know when the seed of change will flourish. May your heart always be a sanctuary for the stillness where clarity is born. May your work be infused with passion and creativity and have the wisdom to balance compassion and challenge. As a leader, may your soul find the graciousness to rise above the fester of small mediocrities. May the integrity of your soul be your first ideal, the source that will guide and bless your work. May it always be so. Have a productive evening and a wonderful rest today.
Thank you, Reverend Carter.
Thank you.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You can be seated. The only announcement that I have, which I would maybe make this at the end of the meeting, but it's an important one for this constituency. We want to remind everybody that the beautification committee's plant sale is coming up soon. It's the 19th and 20th and 21st. It's not this Friday and Sunday, but it's the next one, right?
I thought
Saturday,
it was closer
Friday,
to
Saturday.
the end of the month, no?
Well, it'd be Memorial Day weekend at the end.
Maybe not.
So I think it's not this coming weekend, it's which I think, let's see, that's right, Friday's the 13th. Yeah, that's right. Is that right? It's 20, I think it's
20th.
2021st. But look on the website, and they have some signs all over town, and the proceeds are used for their funds to do all the great things they do in town. So just spread the word, and if you need something for your yard, that's a good place to look.
Mayor Harris.
Yes.
It is May 20th and 21st.
Right, thank you, appreciate that. And so I do have a proclamation to read. This is Public Works Appreciation Week. And it's also, they also have one of these in Canada, I noticed on the website today. They have two, so, but this is our proclamation for Public Works Appreciation Week. Whereas the town of Black Mountain Public Works Department provides services and infrastructure that are an integral part of our daily lives and are critical to addressing the needs of a growing community. Whereas Public Works departments are typically comprised of multiple disciplines delivering a wide range of services. Our town's Public Work Department provides the community with roadway construction and maintenance, residential and commercial sanitation services, recycling, fleet maintenance, facilities maintenance, and stormwater management services. Whereas the quality and effectiveness of these services and operations are dependent upon the training, skill, dedication, and efforts of the Public Works employees. Whereas the health, safety, and economic vitality of this community greatly depends on these services and operations. Now therefore, I, Larry B. Harris, Mayor of the Town of Black Mountain, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th, 2022 as Public Works Appreciation Week in Black Mountain, and I call upon citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing the aforementioned services and to recognize the contributions which public work employees make every day to our health, safety, comfort, quality of life, and overall vitality of the community. Proclaim this the 9th day of May 2022. And it is true. We do appreciate them, their work, and I know each and every one of us do. The services they provide, and they're also the ones that get called, and they're not the only ones that get called in the middle of the night and have to be there, but they're certainly in the group that does happen, and they're there on the snowy and icy weekends and nights. So they do a lot of incredibly important work for us, and we do very much appreciate them. So if you see them out doing their work, roll down your window and give them an encouraging word. We appreciate them very much. I'll really ask any of our council members if they'd like to say anything, just to thank you or whatever. It's just an important job they do. If you're welcome to, if you'd like to, or we'll move along. Okay, we have some citizen comments this evening, and the first would be Kim Lotta. Am I saying that correctly? Kim? Lotta, thank you.
You know my name. Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
council.
Good evening. If you could give us your address, that'd be great too.
I'm speaking on behalf of Black Mountain Tennis Association, BMTA. Please know it is with respect to the council that I submit these comments. According to the capital improvement plan, CIP, a new tennis complex is to be installed in below Lake Tomahawk. It is designed to have 4 tennis courts, a restroom, and a water fountain. This CIP was approved in 2007. That's 15 years ago. What's the holdup? This issue has been passed from council to council since 2007. I can only imagine most new members of the council's past were unaware of the CIP and likely did not know of the tennis complex which is included in this plan. Do you know that the BMTA, currently consisting of 150 members approximately, offers at least a half dozen clinics each year? We coach kids in 4 age groups. We coach adults who are new to tennis or just starting back into tennis. These clinics are sponsored by the United States Tennis Association, USTA. Did you know that far more players use these courts? Not just the MTA members. you know VMTA hosts official league competition in which players come from all over western North Carolina to compete here? This is also sponsored by the USTA. Do you realize what an embarrassment it is to host competitions and visiting players have to play on the severely aged and cracked lower courts? I urge the members of the council to take a walk around these lower courts and see their condition. However, we do appreciate the newly rebuilt upper courts. Do you know the VMTA has donated over $15,000 to the recreation and parks during the past 15 years? What has been done thus far to build this tennis complex? Nothing. Why has this complex been continuously omitted from the financial budget for 15 years? Please, don't be another council that does nothing about building this complex. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kim. Could you get your address for the record?
I will.
Oh, I mean, you could just tell, for the meeting, your address.
65 Diana Drive.
Thank you. Dee Dee Stiles.
I need the mics. I need the mics.
I'll let town manager do that, thank you.
The principal topic that I would like to talk about today is food. My name is Dee Dee Stiles, and I live at 376 Lytle Cove Road. And what I would like to talk about today is food security. If the climate goes the way that most of the scientists predict it will, food security is going to become an issue. And so I would like to focus on some things that Black Mountain could do to help head that off. One of them would be for you to make a proposal to support the federal climate legislation that's supported by seven cities in North Carolina, and particularly Asheville is our nearby neighbor, and some big towns and some small towns are supporting the federal climate legislation. And I would say that it would be a good thing for Black Mountain to pass a proposal to support that, so that the people of Black Mountain and our elected officials and other places in the state would see that Black Mountain cares about what's going to happen to the people in Black Mountain as the climate begins to change. The other thing that I would like to recommend to the town of Black Mountain is that they should be a lot more cautious about how many places are getting mowed down where there should be growing plants, native plants, that would support pollinating insects. It's important to understand that if you want to have food, you have to have pollinators to pollinate the plants that provide the food. And if you want those pollinators, you have to provide the kinds of plants that will support them in the times of the year when there are no like apple trees or tomatoes or squash or whatever else is growing for food. There are several places that I personally know about in Black Mountain that used to have a big field of food for pollinators. One of them is across the street from Ingalls gas station out there on Highway 9. There's a big vacant lot that used to grow up in goldenrod and whitefall asters, which are very important fall forage for the pollinating insects. If you go a little farther out Highway 9, when you get to Cheshire on the other side of the road, Cheshire, they have very carefully preserved their pollinating feed places. So
Thank you, Dee. Appreciate that, those comments.
people need food.
Marilyn Savansky.
Marilyn Sabansky, 516 Laurel Avenue.
There you go, Get a
I'm
little
gonna be
closer.
standing
There
up
you go.
though.
Thank you.
I'm here this evening to advocate for more recycling bins downtown. I hope you all have seen the brand new spiffy silver trash and combo recycling bins that are scattered throughout. They look pretty classy. We got a lot of them. There is a problem though that we've got 22 trash and only 5 that have recycling. Normally, you would have a recycling and a trash side by side everywhere. I've made a real kind of almost cartoonish map and I've plotted where they are. And I think the only way I can do this is to stand up.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, so don't get hung up on the artwork here. But all the green dots are all the new trash bins. And what we have for recycling is a combination, like a longer bin. And we have 5 of them. One is by the Drippolator, about 2 on State Street, 1 up on Broadway, which is a new location, and then 1 has been put down, way down on Black Mountain Ave. If there's aspects to this, you can see there's this whole swath of area on Sutton where there is nothing. Now, activities, there are arts and crafts events, the Sourwood Festival, July 4th, all happens on Sutton, but there's no recycling bin there. And another aspect, and we have all kinds of a development on the west or the east end of Sutton happening. We've got a parking lot here that people use and a parking lot here, but we don't have any recycling at all down here. And one distinctive thing about our downtown is that it's built on a hill. So not only do people have to walk far, they have to walk uphill. And like on Broadway, that's way up there. So I suggest, and there are more and more people walking. If you've paid any attention, there are a lot more people walking from East State Street, and we've got a lot more activity here. So I'm just recommended we do some serious consideration of adding more recycling bins, whether they're individual or combo, and really consider where they are placed. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And that's you just shouldn't need to apologize for your audio visual. It was very effective. Thank you.
I have one more public comment, Mr. Mayor, that
Okay.
came in through email, if I could. Craig Dietz, 14 Caton Place, Black Mountain, North Carolina. My name is Craig Dietz, and I moved to Black Mountain June of 2019 from Houston, Texas, but had lived in North Carolina previously for 22 years. I've been visiting Black Mountain since 2006, but only discovered the Dr. John Wilson Community Garden after attending an Empty Tea Bowls event at the garden in 2019. Empty Tea Bowls opened my eyes to yet another Black Mountain treasure and had been glad to have found it. I signed up to volunteer in the garden that evening. I learned more about the garden through my volunteer work at Bounty and Soul, learning that the garden donates fresh produce to the weekly markets offered through Bounty and Soul. A friend of mine and I decided to apply for a half plot in 2021, and we received one and started our journey learning how to grow vegetables and herbs and all things plant-based organically. We started to collect our kitchen scraps and bring them to the garden for composting. Diana McCall is such a wealth of information and has done a tremendous job of making the community garden a premier community garden in the nation. If you have never been to the garden, the first thing you will notice is the setting. You can see the surrounding mountains. There is a diversity of life with birds, insects, plants, trees, and not to mention people walking the paths, playing disc golf, and gardening. Horses and some newly born foals can be seen prancing at the neighboring horse farm. The pleasure of meeting new people through gardening and learning from each other's experiences is truly the definition of community, and to reap the benefits of growing your own herbs, fruits, flowers, and vegetables is a special accomplishment that has to be experienced. I am making this statement to ask the town to financially support the community garden so that it continue to make the many positive impacts on the lives of our citizens and benefactors of Black Mountain. If the garden fails to exist, Bounty and Soul loses an important partner in helping to nourish our folks. We lose a significant feature of our town and one we should brag about. I doubt there is another community garden quite as successful as ours. Please keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Josh, you've got the consent agenda in front of us.
All right, so your consent agenda consists of 5 items, the first being adoption of minutes. April 11th, 2022 regular session, April 11th, 2022 closed session, and April 7th, 2022 agenda meeting. Item 5B is the In the Oaks Resolution R-22-12, and this is for support for Montreat College as they go after some potential funding for the In the Oaks Manor House for rehabilitation renovation. 5C is extension of Buncombe County tax collection agreement. 5D is a call for public hearing to close the portion of unopened platted portion of Buckeye Street. And lastly is the approval of the selection of our auditor for the next 3 years. And that's your consent agenda.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions for Josh regarding the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Patillo. Any questions, comments? If hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we have another opportunity for citizen comments if any member of the public would wish to comment on the specific items of unfinished business or new business on the agenda. Anyone want to speak? All right, hearing none on the unfinished business. I believe Mr. Sneed's gonna handle this one.
I'll take half. 10, you have two new, or not new policies, but adding to the catalog of policies required for using the ARPA funding. One is the financial and internal control policy. If you need specifics on that, you need to ask Tammy. She's the money lady and your point person on all things ARPA. The second one is I've entitled that a supplement to our conflict of interest policy. We have one, and you'll read this till you go blind. But what it does is it extends our conflict of interest policy out to agencies or departments that we use ARP money in, and adds one thing that we don't have in our standard conflict of interest policy is anything dealing with the American Rescue Plan money. You also have to avoid the appearance of impropriety, which is not in your normal conflict of interest policy. So you can read a lot, find out a little bit in your conflict of interest policy, addendum or supplement.
So,
Anything
yeah,
else?
I mean, we're happy to, if there's any questions, Tammy, I can bring Tammy up, and we can go through some of this, some of the financial internal control policy. But like we mentioned, I think at last meeting, we had a couple, these were the holdovers that we did not adopt at the last meeting, but they require you to have all these things in place before you start spending this money. I honestly think they just try to make it difficult on you.
Josh, would you speak to whistleblower protection?
So we have whistleblower protection now, and what that is, if someone sees something that of course doesn't look right, if they have any kind of feeling that something's not going right, there is a hotline they can call, and it notifies appropriate parties. If it's a complaint on me, it will notify the town attorney, things of that nature. Department head usually comes to me, so that way it can be anonymous that way.
So do you keep an HR, a record of all the whistleblower complaints?
We've had a few.
Right. And, and so what is the control once you get beyond, what's the control on knowing how those have been processed?
As far as, so the ones that we have had come in already don't relate to this at all.
Right.
They don't relate to financials at all. They have been more personnel related.
So we have to have two different hotlines, one financial, one
Well, it's gonna be
non-financial?
the same hotline
Right,
that people
right.
would call into, and it's a program that we pay for every year.
Right.
It's
But the ones previously could have been financial, they could be anything.
They could.
Yeah, they
That's
could,
correct.
yeah.
That's correct. So, we keep all those, and depending on what they are, it would be like any other personnel complaint I would deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And, if there is in fact evidence that
Mhm.
supports this whistleblower's claim, then of course we deal with that appropriately. And if there's not, then of course we let those folks know that have sent the messages in that nothing's been found. No one's been found on it.
Right.
But they have the ability to stay completely anonymous in that system.
Right,
And they can call, they can submit a web tip. It's very thorough.
right. I wanted to available to, not just employees, but primarily is oriented toward employees, isn't it? But anybody can utilize it.
They can, and I think that one of the reasons we put that in our personnel policy when we did it, when we redid it about 2 years ago.
When
The
attorney,
whistleblower, that's correct, when Susan called that for us, that's correct.
she was so kind.
And, I think it's been good, I think it gives people, some people don't wanna say anything because they think people will know who said it.
Right,
I think that's given people
right,
the courage, if you will, to make that,
right.
to reach out.
One thing I would ask you to consult, both the town attorney and Susan on is just what's an appropriate, and this is for your protection, frankly, what's an appropriate manner in which it would be in closed session that you keep counsel in the loop on those things. And there probably should be some regular reporting on that, but I'll offer that not to answer tonight unless you want to, but to make sure we have something in place to close the loop on it in that way, because I think that's frankly good protection for everybody.
Look, I'd probably cover Josh at some point, have that follow-up,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's, and who, whether that be me or Susan, depending on the nature of the complaint.
Yeah, yeah.
Most personnel stuff Susan will get, so I'm pretty much off the hook.
Are we any other questions on matters discussed on the American Rescue Plan adoption policies and procedures? So, Ron, when we need to, as part of this, it kind of unfurled with some of this in 163D, is that right?
Well, 160D added to our conflicts policy, which we'd already adopted, we got that done. And then the requirements for American Rescue Plan adds a layer, like the first, as the appearance of impropriety, and extends it out. You have to impose on, if that money goes to a nonprofit to perform some task, or we contract to have work done, it extends that to them.
Okay, so moving forward, and this is not ARP stuff, but it's the other that falls into it. Should we, starting with the June stated meeting, have the conflict statement on our top of our agenda?
It does no harm. There are a number of people have asked that you put that out in front of people. So, and some cities do, some don't. Some actually ask for a proclamation by each member at the beginning of each meeting, or at least answer the question. Do you have any conflicts on any matters that are on the agenda? But that's entirely up to the board. None of that's required.
Right.
It's part of the transparency, I guess, maybe to make the public feel better if there's some statement to that effect.
You've answered my question. It's not required.
No, it's not.
Because I've seen it pop up at last time I was looking at an agenda for a commissioners meeting. I noticed that they had it on there. And even some of the non-government boards that I work on, it's just good board policy to mention most boards have a conflict of interest policy, obviously, and so forth. But no legalities, no reason we need to do that.
No, you're not required to.
I would still encourage us to consider doing that. I think that it's not a.
I don't mind it either. I
Yeah,
think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to point out, though, that with the conflicts, now this did change the 160D. It's not just financial, it's any member, it's a little broader now, isn't it?
It's broader in two ways. One, under the old conflicts of interest, you had to have a financial interest in the matter that's coming before you. Now, you just have to be financially affected in it. Whatever you're deciding will have a financial impact on you.
Right.
And then second is, it used to be just you, and now it extends you, your close family members, business associates.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and what we can do is just on the agenda, once we finish with the pledge and so forth, is just to have a conflict statement there, and I can just make the comment, that's all. Just to draw attention to it. It's helpful. All righty, so any other questions for Ron or Josh or Tammy? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the American Rescue Plan policies and procedures as presented.
So moved.
Right, thank you, Councilmember Stone and Vice Mayor Stone. And any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Okay, new business lease agreements for billboard and collection on for billboard and collection on communication. Collocation?
That's correct.
Yeah, collocation. not
So you
collection.
don't have anything in front of you for this. What I'm really looking for here, like the agenda says, is just authorizing myself, probably should have thrown the town attorney in there too, to negotiate lease agreements with these two entities. The billboard lease is on, it's on the Clevenger property, so historically that money, it's been written to the Clevengers, and I think we need to get our name on that and get checks for that, because that's our property now, so that's, so the billboard companies typically come in and lease those spaces, and pay X amount of dollars to towns or counties for that sort of thing. Same thing with co-location, so on the on the communication tower we have on top of our public safety building, there is a co-located antenna from, I believe, Skyrunner Internet. So they use that to be able to provide services to different citizens across this community, and we need to be on the receiving end of that to get some money for that co-location. Otherwise, they would have to find another place or put their own tower up. So what I'm looking for, as I mentioned from council, is just some permission to negotiate those leases and bring them back to you, maybe at June or July meeting.
First question, do you think that Ron should be on that too? Also, okay, before we make that motion.
Probably.
Okay,
I think Josh is the only one who has the authority to sign, but we can run that by him.
okay.
Are we asking for any additional authority over the billboard or the?
Well, the authority we would be asking for would just be the authority to receive payment,
Okay.
but not regulation. The billboards are specifically regulated in another way through planning and zoning.
Mhm.
Co-location is the same.
Okay.
So we would not be doing anything with their specific locations, just monetary.
The bad news is that the rental rates they're paying is going down as the internet has become the primary way to advertise. There used to be big bucks and leasing space for billboards, not anymore.
For the tower, are they currently not paying anything for that?
Never have.
Okay.
Council, someone wish to make a motion to authorize the town manager together with the town attorney to negotiate lease agreements for the billboard and for the use of the communication tower.
So moved.
Craig, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Guys are working together well. All in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Stormwater management utility and stormwater management enterprise fund ordinance amendments.
I would ask our planning director, Jessica Cotton, to lead council through this. Please.
It is hard to believe, but we are wrapping up our first billing cycle with the stormwater utility, and it was a bit of a doozy, and we learned some lessons. And so the changes to the ordinance that you have in front of you reflect those changes from an administrative side. There are no new fees, the structure is not changing or anything like that. Instead, it's really just a simplification of some of the mechanisms to move the process along. So instead of tying us to a date in which we pull our data together, it just says annually. So we were able to close the gap between the database being generated for billing and when the bills go out, which significantly reduces the number of property transactions that occur between that was being developed and them going out in the mail. We also set up some procedures of how to handle what we hope are only a handful of property transactions that occur between the development of that list and when the bills go out. We also just kind of create some consistency in the language. The tiers were never to be use specific, but impact specific. So we get away from residential to minimal. And so it's a little clearer. There are a few details added to the tiers of common uses in the town that make it a little clarifying. Medical offices, automotive facilities, banks, things like that in tier 2. They already were tier 2, but we just made it more specific because we had the opportunity to do so. So we thought we would take that. There are a few typos and things like that. We also just shifted the word services to management because the stormwater utility encompasses the entire program that is both service-oriented but also regulatory compliance, which has always been the case, but we just thought that word fit a little bit better. We also did strike language related to the creation of a credit system. The date and the development of one still exists. There were just some details in there that I think were well-intentioned, but you need several years of data to go on to calculate how you're going to develop that policy, and it will be a program in and of itself. And so this removes that and will let us use our data and best practices to develop that in 2024.
It'll be
And
developed in 2024, it says effective January.
it'll be effective, yes. So we'll develop next year when we have at least 2 years of data to work with. And then we do add a little bit of language about we already had the ability to collect late fees and to use methods of collection of delinquent accounts, but I prefer to spell it out a little bit more because it's just a little bit easier on staff in that way.
I'd like to direct council's attention to G on the pages number, but section 48-263 billing and collection. And it reads that utility bills and assessed late fees not paid by the final notice deadline will be referred to debt set-off services or debt collection service. So I would prefer that to be maybe referred. I mean, it gives you the option to, but you don't have to.
My only request is that we would have some sort of guidance that it is consistent. I would prefer staff not be in a situation where we're making.
I would prefer
Yeah.
a different way, and
Yeah.
that would be for you to have you have the ability to be consistent.
Yes,
But if there's no option otherwise, then you're gonna be referring folks to a collection agency, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that. You don't have an option.
I just don't want I don't want it to ever look arbitrary that they picked and
That's
chose who so I think that's what you're saying, right?
yes, I would prefer an internal policy that describes situations where that could be considered. So it's
Create a hardship
consistent.
Up to council
Yeah.
to decide.
Yeah.
You know, you're hemmed in if you leave it the way it is.
So
if we were to develop an internal policy, would that be part of this, or would that be separate from
That'd be separate.
And
Because
would-
collections are always a tricky thing.
Yeah, we do that now with our water bills, but I can't speak intelligently enough about it to tell you if that's mandatory. I think we work with people at times.
You cut their water off.
Well, yeah, we do have that option, but yes, that's a little different. But
But we backed off on that.
Yeah.
Because it's a problem.
It is.
That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
Late fees are, it's just a touchy issue. You gotta deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's always the easier thing to set a rule that just says we don't have to do any discretion. But it's just what we do. We work with people.
well, I love that idea. I mean, I love the notion that we can be flexible. I just don't want them to be the ones that have to make those determinations.
Well, we
So- Yeah,
could work on a internal policy.
okay.
But it's up to council. I mean, it's not up to me.
I mean, that makes sense to me, assuming we can move forward with the policy.
And I think there should be an internal policy too, because you never know who might incur a hardship of some kind.
So you want to change that to shall be, and then we'll be working on it.
May.
Shall be
May.
referred, maybe referred,
Maybe,
maybe referred, not shall, but maybe referred. It'd be going the wrong way, wouldn't it?
So we'll take out will be and put may.
Yeah.
There.
Do you want to add a sentence, a phrase that says with guidance of a policy that's a council-approved policy or?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I should've done-
And that will work if you have that internal policy that people can see. It may
Yeah, that's
not be in your ordinance when they're reading that, but they say, well, it says may not. If you've got a policy that Jessica can show somebody, says, you don't fit any of these, you're gonna have to sell out, or no. I know in here it says if you've had COVID, you've been out of work, whatever that you put into that policy. It's just flexibility. But
So you
put that
know,
on a piece of
that's-
paper so you can show it to people.
Might as well work on the water one too while we're at it.
Whatever we do have, though, probably needs to come back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll, and we may not hit everything you want to see yet, you know what I mean?
Right, but you could work on it for both. Practically could work on one that is for any fees that we charge and how we'll handle late fees and so forth.
Those are the bigger ones. I'm thinking of.
Those are some, I can't think of any other significant ones either. I'm sorry, go right ahead, Jessica.
No, I'm very supportive of having some flexibility because it has not been an easy position to be in and we didn't have it. And I definitely appreciate the, having something that's, can be documented, it's quantifiable, and it's not just because you chose not to, but because you were experiencing a hardship. Those are really the major shifts in this. Like I said, they are just administrative in nature to sort of clarify the process and try to have the most accurate billing roster as possible and recourse of how to handle shifts in property ownership.
Great. Questions for Jessica?
I have a couple.
Yeah, go
Jessica, you touched on this briefly already, but just a few of these changes are related to change of ownership. Can you walk me through? So it's you pull the list, and then you're saying that if it changes within that before the bill is sent, then
Now we have language to specify that. We're asking people to notify us. So if you get the bill and you go, oh, well, I just sold this house, you approach us, we will issue a new bill to the new owner.
so the owner of the property when the bill is sent is responsible. Like at what point,
So it will be the person who, when the bills go out, the person who gets that letter, who owns it that day, that's who's going to be responsible for that. But if you have sold the property in it takes a while to get these bills printed. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks. If something sold in that interim period of time, it has a new owner, the bills have gone out, you got it at your mailing address because that's where the stickers were printed. You just let us know and we will reach out to the new property owner because we have all the property records and we can issue a new bill. So that person who sold it is not responsible for it. The new owner will be responsible for it.
Okay.
Yes. That was, we had a larger period of time between the list being developed and when they went out this year, and we couldn't deviate from that. And this allows us, we're just going to create the list annually so we can do it as close as possible as actually printing the invoices.
Gotcha. And then finally, and this isn't one of your changes, but just for clarity, 48-263 F, it talks about when the rates are set by the town council, and that's part of the budget process. Is that right?
That's correct.
It is.
So when we approve the budget, we're setting the rates.
That's right.
Anyone else? Hearing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve and adopt ordinance 0-22-03 as amended.
So moved.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. All right, I believe we are on to the golf course rates.
I'll bring up Mr. Brent here. Good to see you. Yeah, here.
Good to be
Once
here.
a year.
How are y'all? All right. So everybody should have this in front of you. Basically, the reason I'm here tonight is we need to get the rates up a little bit. Obviously, the cost of things are starting to add up. Fuel, especially diesel fuel, is really high right now, causing us some problems. But also, demand is really high right now. We're staying full most days, 85-95% of the tee sheet's full. So if there was ever a time, we just got new golf carts, the golf course is in great shape. If there's ever a time to go up a little bit, this is probably it. Also, if you look on the second page, I believe, actually the second and the third page, I showed what our competitors are doing as far as memberships and daily rates. So what I'm asking for is actually still below what pretty much everyone else around us is doing. So we're still giving a great value.
We just need to try to make the most out of our prime times, which, Saturdays, Sunday mornings, we need to go up just a little bit. Cart fees, we just got new carts. Gas is up a little bit. I want to go up on that. So I'll go over with you here what I'm proposing. And then if anybody has any questions, you can let me know. But I'm proposing to go take the family membership to $2,000 and the individual membership to $1,400 per year. That's up from $1,200 on the individual and $1,750 on the family. It's roughly a 15.5% increase between the two. Cart fees going from 20 to 22 for 18 and from 10 to 11 on 9. And I am wanting to put back in the riding fee being required before 10 on weekdays and 12 o'clock on weekends. That's just through our prime season, May 1st through September 30th. Walking can be allowed anytime, October 1st through, the way our rates usually run would be through the end of April. So we're a little bit late right now. That's why that looks different. As far as our greens fees go, I want to go to 45 during the weekdays and 55 on the weekends. That's up from 40 and 50. Which is roughly about 11% increase between the two.
For the public, that includes the cart.
That does include the cart, correct. I am showing the riding 9 rates, 25 during the week, 30 on the weekends. Walking's 23 weekday, 33 weekend, and 9 would be 12 and 19. It is a little bit higher on the weekend just because it's prime time. We need to get it when everybody wants to be out there. And then the senior rate going up a couple bucks to $37. That's still a really competitive rate with what everybody's doing around us. Moving the twilight rate to 2 p.m. Right now it's at 1 p.m., 2 p.m. in the summertime because you can stay out there till 8 o'clock. I think it's reasonable to give people 6 hours to play before dark. And we're taking that from $30 to $33, which is a 10% increase. And taking the weekend from 35 to 40. So they're getting a $10 discount on weekends. Actually, a $15 discount from, the morning rate. After 2 p.m., it drops $15. And then 9-hole rate of 22 and 25, a weekday, weekend. And keeping the walking rates in the afternoon the same, because that is typically when we have some people trying to come out late in the evening. So, they walk 9, walk 18 holes. And that's a pretty fair rate. I feel like $20 during the week, 10 on the weekends. They come out after work, 5 o'clock, and try to walk 9 holes, $10. And, it's a slower time for us anyway. So it's a good use of the course and we make a little extra revenue that way. And then also I want to keep the Players Pass program in place, but I do want to change it a little bit. Before we just charged $200 and you got $10 off each round off the rack rate. This year I want to offer it with their first round of golf is included in that $200 because it gives a little bit more value to buying that pass. And then with the rate increase going up, I think we'll keep the ones we have, but still gain some new ones. They get that first round and then they're saving that $10. So 45 on the weekend as opposed to 55, 35 during the week as opposed to 45. It should draw a lot of people in. And in that, I'm also saying, just so it's very clear, that is only eligible on the rack rate, which is the riding 18 rate for each day, the highest riding 18 rate. It's not the senior rate, the 9-hole, or the twilight rate. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for here. If anybody has any
Questions for Brent? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 rate schedule for the Black Mountain Golf Course as presented.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So moved.
Any questions for Brent? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
Storybook Trail proposal at Lake Tomahawk.
All right, a month or two ago, we were approached by the Greenways and Trails Committee, who were looking to install a storybook trail around Lake Tomahawk. So I have Steve Cochran with me, who is a part of that committee. I'm going to let him talk about it a little more in depth. If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to ask them.
Okay, thanks for hearing us today. My wife Sally and I are members of the Black Mountain Greenways and Trails Committee. And in one of our open meetings a few months ago, Melissa Presley, the manager of the library, asked us to entertain, we were asking for community input and asked us to entertain the notion of a storybook trail. She had been exposed to some up north and was very excited about the prospect. So we said, well, let us take it on and do some research and investigating and such. And we were very pleased to find that some wonderful, very effective examples exist, one of which I think you all received an electronic copy of this, becoming a storybook trailblazer. And this is actually a program of the Governor's Early Literacy Council right next door in Tennessee. And we were delighted to see this is like a 15-page how-to, step-by-step, everything from fundraising to building the simple standards. And the overall notion is that on an existing and public trail, and as it expresses here, is you look for somewhere which is already well-traveled, has restroom facilities, water facilities, hopefully a playground, and we kind of check. You know, Lake Tomahawk is right there, and it says a quarter mile to a half mile is an ideal length. And what it prescribes is approximately 18 standards geared to the height of children from pre-K to about 5th grade. And on each of these standards, approximately 18 by 32 inches, 2 pages of a storybook are printed. And something we got excited about too, there's new kinds of technologies in printing things as opposed to when you think of some of the standards around town where they're under plexiglass and they become, the moisture gets underneath or they get very cloudy. This newer kind of technology, which is much less expensive, much to our amazement, does this very effectively. So say a 30-page book, 2 pages, an introduction board, 2 pages on one board, and then moving around the lake via 18 different standards. Another neat facet of this process is that those boards can be changed. So stories can be changed seasonally, and encourages to think about, you know, the natural surroundings. So at the lake, of course, you have waterfall, fowl, and seasonal fauna and things. Also, they had sample budgets in here, about $4,500 in what they prescribe on this. When we did our investigating here through our own local town sources with local printers and local suppliers, it's just about half of that for under $3,000. We think that we would be able to do this, and also that with all of the enthusiasm and activism and volunteerism here, that getting supplies, when we were even collecting estimates, you know, when we were asking for estimates, people said, well, tell us more about this project, that we'd really like to be involved, you know, talk to us about discounts and things. So we were at that point and talked to Josh to see if, you know, it made sense, because we thought it made sense around the lake. And we talked to him and he said, well, let's go through this process. And we gave him the proposal that he asked for, which probably parts of that have come to you. And this was the next step. Melissa hoped to be here tonight very much to talk about it. And she had a late afternoon eye appointment with dilation and was not able to get here. The doctor was later, so she sends her regards and hoping that this can go forward. One last piece of the main integrating, of course, the Friends of the Library organization, which is so effective and such. And the Black Mountain Beautification Committee, we have asked for them to consider support here. And we haven't really owned the newly created Friends of Lake Tomahawk, which is actually headed up by the folks who own the Arbor House Inn at the lake. And they're very keen on supporting this and helping to develop even more robust activity around the lake. So with that, that's kind of the concept. We didn't want to get ahead of ourselves until we were able to present it to you. So again, thanks Josh for helping us here, and thank you all for hearing.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate all your work and all those who are working with you. Questions?
Well, you've managed to pull together two of my very favorite topics, which are the greenways and the library. So way to go on that. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful endeavor. And I think the resources you mentioned, Friends of the Library and so on, the funding will happen. You're gonna check with the homeowner or the property owners around the lake, right? In terms of placement, just to make sure they're okay with where you place these things.
Right, and that's, we definitely would be working with, the folks here, again, it's about every 160 feet, just dividing the trails, 0.5, just over a half mile right now, and with 18 standards, it works out to about every 160 feet.
Right.
Some would probably be on the lake side of the trail, and some, on the other side of the trail, depending, what makes sense. And again, the Arbor House folks who have the kind of the anchor of the community there certainly, are keen on doing that. So we would look to just be the facilitating organization, and the Greenways and Trails Committees, I'm sure you're aware, act as the fiscal agent and kind of is able to, through the Greenways Commission, I guess, actually you can accept funds and then send those out. So that's the primary role for the Greenways and Trails Committee, to just kind of help be a switchboard operator among the various organizations that would be interested in helping to support and importantly maintain this too. We realize that ongoing maintenance and making sure that things are kept up and safe and all. So in keeping with the Trails Committee right now is looking very much at a kind of adopt a trail program, much like adopt a highway and such, where folks would actually commit, to do patrols and keep things up. And also they certainly don't expect the town to be, taking care of all of this by any means.
Questions? Other questions?
I ran it by my 5-year-old daughter, and she was really, really excited about the idea. So.
Any conflict of interest? Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion that we approve the project as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilman King. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve, do you have anything to communicate to us about?
Couple of things that are coming down the pike. We've discussed the agreement for the operation of the library with the county for years. As we've noticed several times, there was an agreement that we think was reached in 1986, but any signed document disappeared from the face of the earth. So we've been operating under an agreement that's in writing, just never signed. And the county wanted to update that. They sent me a proposed lease last week. Ran into Melissa at the tailgate market. She said a concern that the library board has is the county wants that to be year to year. She's also heard that the county doesn't want to put any money into the building. That's nothing new. That's what the board has done all these years. But I want to go over it. There's some things I want to talk to the county about, but by the next board meeting, I'll have that to you with some changes I need to sit and make.
Right. I would differ with the comment about the county and the money for the building. The county manager, number one, we had commissioners come out here and tell us that they were interested in helping us, procure some funds for the library. But the county manager told me, and I think Josh the same thing, a couple of 2 or 3, 4 months ago, that, or it could have been 2 years ago now, it was COVID, who knows, it was sometime in the more recent months. They just have other library buildings in the county that just have a higher priority than our building right now. But they intend to get to it, and that was it's certainly their word to us. Councilmember King can speak to it.
Well, I'm thinking it was the tenor of the lease itself that gave that impression.
Right, probably.
Well, a year-to-year lease, I can understand why they wouldn't want to put money in that, but we have to get a lease long enough to justify a large influx of money on that building. And they sounded to me like they were all over that.
Well, Chairman Newman came out and looked,
Archie was there, excuse me, Councilmember Pertile.
They were.
That's right. So anyway,
I think we're a long way from a finished product.
I do too.
Just got the draft right.
Thank you. That sounds good. Anything else? That was one.
There's one. No, everything else is over the course of the next month. Jessica's gonna load you down again next month. But a handful of things that come in for her stuff going forward. What I wanted to comment on is, I think most of you know by now that my plan was by June 30th to retire, doing nothing but municipal work after that, which might be helpful as the workload loads up. The problem is, you guys are interfering with my retirement plan because you're coming up with 40 hours worth of work a week. However, that being said, there's a lot going on, and I'm hoping that position will be a little bit better position to keep up with you.
Right, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that, Ron, appreciate it.
I don't really have anything. I'll let Savannah talk about the boards, advisory boards. Time for
Yes.
vacancies.
It is that time. I just wanted to mention that we will have vacancies on every board. So it's time to get your applications in. Those will be accepted through June 6th. Then they'll go to the various boards and commissions to be considered, and then back to town council at the July meeting. So if you're interested, you can send me an email or call my office. I'll be glad to walk you through the process.
Right, thanks, Savannah, appreciate it. Council?
I have a question for Josh. Do you have any update on the FEMA projects?
Yes, we've got the green light to go on the Greenway, so we're just getting we have to get 3 informal quotes.
When you say the Greenway,
The Greenway section on Flat Creek.
okay.
So that is fully funded through FEMA. The bridge at the golf course.
Sorry, so what's the holdup on that at this point?
We have to get, I have to get 3 more informal bids, which we're currently working on.
Okay.
So, they've said we have to follow our procurement process, which we always do anyway, but any kind of project that meets certain thresholds, we have to get bids on. And that being as low as it is, it's informal bids, so fairly straightforward. The problem is getting people to call you back and get you those bids, but we'll get there soon. The golf course or the golf cart bridge is gonna end up being funded at about $7,000. That last bid, and we'll have to get more bids for it as well. The last bid for it was over 20. The state, however, has said they are gonna fund the remainder. So North Carolina Emergency Management is gonna fund the remainder of that project, so we're not gonna have any money in that one. And we are still going back and forth on the Veterans Park and Swannanoa River Restoration Project. Right now, that money that they are allocating for us is $160,000. So we're gonna be short about half that. So the new cost is about $345,000. Now, the emergency management may help some with that. I don't know that they're gonna make up that whole difference because it's such a large amount. But we are speaking with the grant funding agency we spoke with and got funding for that project in the past to try and get more money from them as well. So that one will be the last one to be finished. The Greenway, you should start seeing work on that probably in the next month or so. And then the bridge, probably about the same time. But the Veterans Park stuff is gonna take longer.
Does I assume it does, but the Veterans Park, the river restoration or repairing the restoration was done. Fit within the stormwater world of funds, procuring funds?
Potentially, we could do something with that.
Well, you would think so.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta prove that it's been a beneficial stormwater and you're putting in some kind of controls to make sure it doesn't happen again. I mean, it's not as easy as some of the other money, but there is possibility.
You know, going back to our workshop of 2 weeks ago, and we may need some assistance anyway, just in, with managing what is gonna be a short request period.
That's correct.
Coming up with these one-time funds at the state, and water and stormwater being the topic.
That's right.
And so we might want to keep that in mind, and when we get to that point, which probably should not be too far from now,
Yeah.
of contracting with somebody on that.
And I'll keep, Withers and Ravenel in mind, the
Yeah.
folks that were here 2 weeks ago.
Right,
that do
right,
that type of
right.
stuff.
Right, because we've got anyway, that's more on the budget side of things, but that would seem to be one worth keeping on the list. It's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. And then lastly, I'll mention this, our US 70 waterline project. We did meet with the engineer last week. He's going to get started. Probably going to be 6 months to engineer it. Probably 3 to 4 months for a survey. So that's part of the time that's gonna take is to get the survey. Then he has to do his engineering on that. We'll get the permit from the state, which I think is good for 2 years, if I'm not forgetting what he told me. And he said at that point, we can bid it out, see what the prices look like. If they're astronomical, we can wait a little bit longer and bid it out again. This one is not something it is needed, but it's not an emergency to fix it. And his concern is he's doing many other projects throughout the state and he's seeing the cost come in just astronomical.
Has the engineer on the dam gotten that paperwork to
Yes.
DEQ?
Yes,
They call DEQ now?
today. It may be different tomorrow. Maybe you got yard tomorrow.
Thank you. Council?
I would just like to remind everyone that we're about to start several budget workshops, and you'll have to go over the dates.
So, well, that's set right now for May 19th. So my plan, we're a little bit later in the season, but what I'm gonna do for you on May 19th is I have to have my recommended budget presented to you by June 1st by statute. So May 19th, I'm more likely gonna have a recommended budget for you. Now, we can make changes to it, not a big deal.
Sure, we have to walk through it.
Walk through it, but in order to meet our statutory requirements, I think it may make
But
sense.
we're not
to do it.
meeting this Thursday.
No, it's next. I've got a teenager.
Frees up my schedule a little bit more. I think I made them a recurring meeting here somewhere, so but a week from Thursday. All right, any council, anything?
I have two things. First, I wanted to recognize our former garden manager, Diana McCall. She was at that effort for one way or another since 2007, as I understand it, and really, as you heard in an earlier citizen's comment, brought our community garden along to the level it is today. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Diana. She's moved on to some new endeavors, and she leaves the garden in a really great place. So the other thing I wanted to say is a joint comment from me and Council Member Christie. This May is National Mental Health Month, National Mental Health Awareness Month. And you might have seen signs around town. The Black Mountain Counseling Center has done a phenomenal job with some yard signs and some business signs and so on, and to encourage people, if they need some help, to get some help. There's no shame in asking for help, and these past couple of years have been especially rough for almost everybody. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Councilmember King. Anyone else? Hearing none, we would like to entertain a motion for a closed session to discuss the potential acquisition of property as permitted by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11.5 and to consult with the town attorney as permitted for legal matters as permitted by North Carolina Statutes 143-318.11A3.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Everybody have a nice evening.